Welcome to the Unblock Your Business podcast. I'm Abby Rogers, success coach, business coach and hypnotherapist, and I help high achievers and business leaders master their subconscious habits for success, income goals and, above all, happiness. But success isn't just about mindset or strategy. It's about combining both and sealing the deal with a big dose of subconscious alignment, because our subconscious holds the true key to unlocking our potential. Let's dive in and look at how you can show up bigger, better and more uniquely aligned in life and business today. Hello and welcome to today's episode where we're going to be looking at 10 real reasons that you procrastinate. Now we often think of procrastination as laziness or as just putting things off, and we really berate ourselves for it or really label ourselves as procrastinators and sort of feel that it's something we are stuck with and that's just part of our personality, and it can't be changed. But we're going to look at why that might not be the case today. And I think just to say first of all that labeling ourselves is a whole other episode. I've got lots of thoughts on that, but I'd love to just give you two things that I want you to take away from today's episode before we really dive in. So procrastination, as I said, is often down to a whole host of reasons, and it's very rarely just laziness. So I'd love you to firstly today just stop having a go at yourself for it today. Just let yourself off the hook and understand that there's a good reason for it, and we're going to look at that in a few moments. But also, second thing is that the more we do pick on ourselves for procrastinating and the more we tell ourselves that we are rubbish at focusing and rubbish at getting things done, the more it tends to make us procrastinate. So try to avoid doing that to yourself, because those negative thoughts really fuel the part of the brain that stops us being able to think clearly and being able to step back and take action. It sends us into paralysis mode and inaction, which is exactly what we don't want. So let's rewrite that thinking today and let's look at what might really be going on for you if you are a habitual procrastinator. So the first thing I want to talk about is tiredness. Because when we are tired, our brains just can't process things at their normal speed or with the same amount of clarity as when we are well rested. So often when we're procrastinating, it's just that we need more rest. And when we're tired, we get slow and we don't think as quickly, and it can be hard to perform even the most basic of functions, let alone try to do anything that really requires any kind of insight or creative thinking. Sleep really is one of the fundamental things that I work on with my clients, because having a well-rested brain just makes such a difference to everything, to emotional resilience, to our ability to just get the job done and enjoy it. And procrastination is a huge part of that. When we're well rested, I bet you've noticed this, you'll wake up in the morning on fire and ready to go, and it's easy. So first thing is, if you're feeling like your brain is on the go slow, just check in with yourself as to whether you really are getting enough rest. 7 to 9 hours a night for most people is optimal and is needed. There's a lot of mythology around there about only needing 4 hours a night. It doesn't work for most of us. Honestly, it's not good news. So try and make sure that you're getting that good window of 7 to 9 hours sleep a night to feel really well rested, to allow your brain to go through its full set of sleep cycles and process all your emotional baggage so that you can wake up the next day fired up and ready to go. Second thing is then that we also need regular breaks. So as well as being tired through not getting enough sleep, our brains can also get tired just through working too much, because we only have a finite capacity to process information in a real focused thinking kind of way. So our brains just can't stay in busy active mode for more than about 90 minutes. We need that downtime, we need that break or change to something else just to allow our brains to re-energize basically and get back to a point where they are able to think clearly. So schedule in breaks, try and get away from your computer and from thinking. Even just wander off and have a cup of tea, go and have a quick leg stretch, look out the window. Just something that gets you out of active thought for a few moments, just to allow your mental batteries to recharge. Otherwise, you'll just feel that feeling of your brain kind of slowly grinding to a halt. And I'm sure we've all noticed, maybe when we've been reading for a period of time, that we'll just get to that point where we start reading the same line over and over again and it's not really sinking in. That's the time when your brain's like, no, had enough here, I need a little break before I can carry on. So yeah, go and find yourself something different to do that doesn't involve thinking so hard for a few moments. A bit of exercise, a good stretch, listen to something, anything that just switches your brain into nice, easy flow mode. So third thing is overwhelm. And that can be just thinking about too many things in one go. So often we'll do that with a new project, or when we've got lots on and we're focusing on everything we've got to get done. And our brain just looks at all this stuff that we've got to achieve and it just feels absolutely overwhelmed, as the word suggests. And our brain just kind of descends into panic. It just can't handle all the ins and outs of how we're going to achieve all that stuff, and it just feels like massive pressure and panic. And that panic sends our brain into paralysis mode. So the best thing that we can do to help prevent that really is to make sure that we're really prioritising and maybe only looking at a small amount of what we've got to get done, the really important stuff. So really check in with your goals and focus on those things that are most important, genuinely most important, not just the things that we are telling ourselves are important. Because so often we just get into that place, don't we, where we're looking at everything that we've got to do and telling ourselves things have to be completed by a certain date, when actually if we sit down, write them out on paper and think logically about it, very often deadlines can be shifted, things can be moved around, things aren't as important as we are making out to ourselves. And we do that stressed out thing even more when we're in panic mode. So just list it all out, prioritise, take the pressure off, break things down into real baby steps, maybe just pick out your top 2 or 3 goals. I always find that really helpful, and look at how you might just start those. Don't feel like you've got to have the whole process documented from the word go, because that again can just be paralysing to our minds. So yeah, real baby steps, real just like looking at the very first thing you need to do. So we do this in great detail over in the membership, and I found that really, really helps people get back on track and get focused, just breaking those goals down into little tiny baby steps, and it's so much easier to see the rest of the path ahead once you've done that. Fourth thing is that procrastination can also just be about clarity on our direction. So if we don't have a real clear aim in sight, if we haven't got a really concrete kind of end goal, then our brain can just kind of get a bit lost. It just doesn't quite know where to aim for. So it will just have us doing all the things that it thinks might kind of get us to where we want to be, or maybe even not, but it doesn't have that real clear focus on where we need to go. Our internal sat-nav doesn't have a final destination. So it just kind of wanders around aimlessly and just doesn't really do those things that are going to get us to the right place. So we need to give ourselves clear instructions. That doesn't have to mean that we've got to have the absolute end goal solidified. Doesn't have to be the whole picture again. We don't have to know all the ins and outs of everything, but we do need something specific with a realistic time frame to help ourselves focus, most definitely. So if you're finding that you're just not really working with any kind of focus in mind, then just have a go at making something concrete and giving yourself a proper time frame to get things done by. Fifth thing, it might actually be that we do have a direction, but we are misaligned with that direction. So if our subconscious mind doesn't really agree with what we're doing or what we've been asked to do, so maybe often you'll find this if you're working with maybe a coach or in a group program or something like that, where it's very directive and you've got to do very specific tasks. If your brain doesn't agree with that on a subconscious level, there'll be lots of resistance there, and it will find a way to put the brakes on, even if you're kind of thinking to yourself, oh, I know I need to get this thing done. It's part of the program. I've paid all this money to do this thing. Why am I not doing it? And we start having a go at ourselves again, don't we? But it just might actually be that we're fundamentally misaligned with that work and we don't feel it's right for us. So check in with your values and check in with what you really, really want and your ultimate aims, I guess. And really trust your gut as well. And I think when we've got really, really clear on what we do want and where we want to go for ourselves, then it just becomes so much easier to make decisions and to jump in with both feet and really embrace doing the things that are going to help us get there, because we can really remind ourselves of what's important and why. And we can really see reasons for doing things when we are subconsciously on board with them, when it makes sense to us. So we can then be really intentional about our time, and we can sit down with a clear plan in mind to get things done. And there's no resistance there. It's just like, yep, I know this is the right thing for me, and maybe it's tricky, but I'm just going to do it anyway, because I know it's going to get me to where I want to be. So halfway there. So the next one is fear of failure, and this is such a big one. We often don't realise it's there. We often don't realise we've got this fear of failure in the background, but it matters so much to us on a subconscious level to not fail. And that's something that we really have to overcome, because it's inevitable, isn't it? Obviously, that we're gonna fail at certain points if we're ever going to be successful. In fact, most successful people have failed time and time and time again to get to where they are. So the reason failure is such a big thing is because failure in our ancestral times basically meant certain death. So it's a big red light to us. Our brain isn't thinking, if I get this thing wrong in my business, I might look a bit silly, or I might not make the income that I want to make. Our brain's basically thinking, if I get this thing wrong in my business, then I'm going to be judged and society's going to shun me and I'm going to be fed to wild animals. That's kind of where our brain's coming from without us realising it. So it's going to be fairly terrified of putting a foot wrong if that's all it's seeing. Sometimes I think fear of failure can be motivational in a way. But sometimes it can be absolutely paralysing because our brain just freezes and it just won't allow us to move forward at all. It's like so scary that we just don't even want to go there. So what it does instead is it clouds our thinking. It makes us question ourselves and lose our decision-making capabilities. And we end up then just like painting our toenails rather than doing what we should be doing because we are so subconsciously scared of getting things wrong. And we get into this whole what if scenario and we start to convince ourselves that it's all going to go horribly wrong. But we don't know that, do we? We're very, very good at focusing on the negatives and on the worst case scenario, but we never really think about all the good things that could happen. And there are usually actually far more of the good things that could happen. So I find that a real powerful shift in thinking, and that's a really nice, powerful exercise to do, is just to sit down and start to look for yourself at all the things that could go well instead. And as mentioned, it also helps to really recognise that failure is a great thing because it just helps us to learn what we do need to do in order to succeed. So every little failure helps us succeed a bit more, if you like. So if we're prepared to fail a bit every day, success eventually becomes inevitable. So just reframing your thinking in that way can help us move towards getting over that fear of failure. So equally, number 7, fear of success. That can also be a big scary thing too, because success basically represents change to everything that we know, and that, again, to our subconscious mind is absolutely terrifying. Success also means potentially being judged by those people that we know and love in a different way. and we are terrified of judgment and rejection and being different, and moving away from our family and our roots in terms of success definitely marks us out as different. So again, our subconscious mind is looking at success as a potential threat, and we're imagining the worst, and we think that we're going to lose everyone that we've ever known and all the important things in our lives that we've ever been attached to. And our brain's just like, no, I don't want to go there. It's just too scary. And logically, we can see that life could be so much better once we've got to our goals, but our subconscious brain's just trying to keep us stuck and keep us where we are, and sabotage that success to stop that risk of us again being cast out into the wilderness and not being part of society, and that society that we love. So next one, number 8, is fear of what getting there might actually entail. Now, you don't hear about this one often, but sometimes the journey itself can be a pretty daunting thing, a pretty scary thing. Sometimes it can look really threatening. And most often, I think that happens when we don't know what's involved in achieving our goals. If we think it involves something that really scares us, perhaps that might be an issue, but often it's just that fear of almost the unknown and what we need to do to get there. So if you have got a really clear outcome and you're not moving towards it, it might just be that goal is a bit too enormous and scary and distant at the moment, and your brain just can't quite see how you would ultimately get there, and it's going, yeah, I don't know, I can't believe that would happen, or I can't visualize how I might actually achieve that thing, so let's do something else instead. That's a lot easier. So breaking it down, making those goals smaller can really help again. I think doing things that you've never ever done before, looking at the overwhelming tasks in front of you, can be really, really daunting. So with the podcast, I'll admit I found the thought of launching a podcast really pretty daunting until I sat down and researched it and realised that what was actually involved wasn't that hard at all, and I already knew how to do quite a lot of the back end stuff, and it was just a couple of bits of research I needed to do to make it all come together. But before I sat down and really looked at the detail of it, my mind was like, oh, that seems so far removed from where I am and what I'm used to now. And our mind is just great at building monsters that aren't really there and imagining the worst and just really creating this whole extra level of imagined difficulty that just isn't there. So if we can give ourselves clear facts instead, it all becomes so much easier. So as we said earlier, breaking things down into manageable goals and actually shifting those goalposts until you come up with something that stretches you, but it feels achievable. So breaking tasks down into little chunks. So rather than writing a book, having that as your big goal, maybe that just becomes something much smaller, like drafting an outline, writing a chapter, doing something that's just the beginning, just putting a foot forward. And if there's a genuine barrier, like maybe a phobia of doing lives, and that's something that you feel that you really need to do, firstly, well, you could always look at, is there another way that you can achieve your goals and get that visibility? But if you think it's really something you need to do in your business and you really are determined to overcome that thing, then good for you. I love people that are just really determined to succeed and determined to overcome their fears. So you can definitely get help with that. And that's exactly what I did when I was struggling with stage fright and public speaking. I got some hypnotherapy and some help for that. And that's a lot of what I work on with clients nowadays as well. So yes, to a degree, feel the fear and do it anyway, but only to a degree, because sometimes if we're just pushing against that fear all the time, we can actually keep reinforcing the fear and making it more scary. So don't keep doing something if it keeps scaring the pants off you and it's just getting worse and worse. If that's the case, then just get some help and get yourself to where you need to be in an easier way where you don't have to feel terrified all the time. Number 9 is doing things because we think we should. So often in business we are told that we should do things a certain way, we should follow a certain process, Maybe we've got an idea in our mind that it's really, really important to have our name absolutely perfect before we start creating the course or program or whatever it is that we want to put together. And that feels like the starting point, and it feels like what we ought to do because that's what we've been taught or that's what we've perceived from other people. But very often things like that can be a real block to us, and we're kind of sat there trying to think of this name and it's just all not coming together. So don't feel like you have to do everything in a particular order or a particular way. Do whatever feels right at the time to you. Do them your way instead. So maybe don't even feel like you have to have all the content created perhaps before you sell the course that you want to sell. Sometimes we'll do that just because we think that we should, and we need to get things absolutely perfect before we can put anything out there to the world. But believe me, there is nothing more motivating than having a course sold to make you sit down and create that content. And with things like naming, very often actually things like that will start to reveal themselves as you go through the process of creating whatever it is that you're doing. So if it's like going back to the book example, if you're writing a book, don't think you can't write the book until you've got the name. Just start writing the book, and then I'm sure the name will come as you go along. So don't feel that you've got to stick with the conventional order of things. Just do what feels right now. Let it flow. Let things be mixed up and messy. So often we just stifle our creativity by trying to fit into everyone else's boxes and into those shoulds that we hear so much about, or even the ideas that we've got in our own minds. So just don't be afraid to just do what feels good to you right now. So the last one is that it might just actually be that your brain just isn't quite ready to move forward on this thing yet. So if you're finding yourself procrastinating, it might be that your subconscious mind's kind of saying to you, well, hang on a moment, I've got a little bit more input to give here. Haven't quite figured it out yet, but give me some time and I will. So it might be that there are kind of more dots to be joined in the background, more thoughts to be put together before you've really got exactly what you need to sit down and get this thing done, before that eureka moment hits and flow starts to happen. So if you're just feeling like you're not getting anywhere, don't beat yourself up. As we said earlier, sometimes giving ourselves a hard time can just make our brain get even more paralysed and even more stuck. So sometimes just walking away can be the very best thing we can do, just allowing ourselves a little bit of grace and saying, not right now. That might be a really, really helpful thing for you to do if you're just finding no other solutions. So I hope that has been useful. A few interesting ideas there. So I would love to know what's been your biggest takeaway and whether any of those really resonate with you. So if there's anything here that you really identify with, do get in touch and let me know. You can email me at the address in the show notes. I'll put my email address in there. Or a really good place to do it is just to join my Facebook group, which is called, I've renamed it now, it's called Unblock Your Business, Mindset, Strategic and Subconscious Alignment. So just type in Unblock Your Business and I'm sure it will pop up there. And in the group we'll be discussing this, and there's lots of other help and input and support there. And you can share your thoughts with like-minded people and have a good chat about this and see that other people are facing exactly the same challenges as you. And I think, again, that often is so helpful, just to realise that we are not alone and there's actually a whole community of people out there struggling with exactly the same things as we are. So pop over there and check us out and say hi. And as always, of course, I would really appreciate any reviews and shares. So if you're sharing on social media, just use the hashtag #UnblockYourBusiness to help us get found, and that would be fantastic. And I would be really, really grateful for that. So I hope you have a fantastic week, and I shall be back next week with more interesting and exciting stuff to share. Take care. Thanks for listening. I really hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, it would be incredible if you could pop a review on iTunes, Google, Spotify, or your favourite podcast platform. And if you want to dive deeper, you can find me in my free Facebook group, Align Your Mind for Limitless Success, or at www.abigail-rogers.com. See you next week.